Hello and welcome back to a little place we like to call the No Holds Bar with me, Adam, host of Comedian versus Economist podcast and widely regarded as one of the simplest minds in finance. Each week I'm joined by an actual expert though to educate me and hopefully you on how they're thinking about stocks and the stocks they're thinking about. It's rapid fire though, buy or sell. We're going to rip through as many stocks as we can in the time we've got and we'll put our money where our mouth is. Tracking each stock on the Equity Mates website so you can see how things pan out, good, bad, or otherwise. And a reminder, this isn't a deep dive, but hopefully it gets you thinking. You can continue the journey on the Equity Mates website. There's plenty of resources there. You'll find the tracker for this show along with the Find a Company page where you can get more info on all of the companies that we cover on this show. So on with it. And today I am thrilled to be joined by Owen Rask, founder and chief investment officer at Rask Group. Welcome, Owen.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me, mate. Pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Yeah, great. Thrilled to have you here. Hey, before we get started, I want you to relax, settle in. We are coming to you, of course, from the No Holds Bar, the most stocked bar in the world. And Owen, I'd like to offer you a drink from our bar here. What could I get for you?
Well, Huberman says you can't have a coffee after 1 p.m. and it's at the time of recording, it's just before 1 p.m. So right. I would sneak in a coffee at this time of day, and I would go with soy cappuccino. So it's seeing that I'm from Melbourne, I'm white, I'm nearly middle-aged male. It would make sense that that's what I'd be doing.
I did see on your website, actually, you list your favourite coffee places all over Melbourne. So
yeah, that's it.
Something tells me you're a bit of a coffee fanatic, perhaps.
Yeah, that's it. We've done a lot of interviews with coffee shop owners, roasters and things like these on some of our podcasts. And we're from Melbourne, we don't have much, so we go with sport and coffee. And so you got to pick one, and my battle is with finding the best coffee. So that's all available on the website.
Yeah, excellent. All right, let's get stuck into the show. We're going to get through as many stocks as we can. Keen to get your thoughts, Owen, on all of them. Let's ease into it. We're going to start with the Vanguard Australian Shares Index ETF, ASX VAS, currently trading at $87.56. Owen, is this a buy or a sell for you?
It's a definite buy for me, Adam. The combination of the 10 companies and ETFs that we'll be talking about today, I would say go in the core or satellite allocation of a portfolio. So I'll try and make that clear as we go through. But basically anything that goes in your core portfolio, this is stuff that you can dollar cost average into. You don't have to worry about things like valuations or all that fancy stuff that everyone else seems to talk about. You can just set a recurring reminder in your calendar, or you can just automate it. Like some of the brokers now allow you to auto invest. And basically what you do is you'll just auto invest in something like this, a day or so after your pay packet comes in. And depending on your broker, you can automate that with $10 or you can do it with 10,000, doesn't really matter. But for me, you get 300 companies. Some people say, well, why not go with BetaShares A200 or why not go with the IOZ ETF from iShares? And, the list just goes on and on and on. And the reality is it doesn't really matter too much which one you pick because all the studies show that just being invested is the most important thing. And like Bryce and Ren always talk about this, and they said it in their recent book, that's the important thing. And so I think for the most part with VAS, what you get is a low-cost ETF. You get exposure for your core, Aussie shares, pace franking credits, all the bells and whistles, and you can just sleep at night, I guess, knowing that that's in there. And then when we get to the other 9 names, we can add a bit more spice and a bit more flair to what we're doing to keep us up.
Right, we've got a solid foundation. I like that. I like anything I don't have to think too much about, Owen, is right in my wheelhouse. Brilliant. All right, so that's a buy for you. All right, next up, we are looking at Brainchip Holdings Ltd, ASX BRN, currently at 20 cents. I don't know about you, Owen, but I am sick of spending literally seconds using my eyes like a Luddite to tell if an apple is rotten or not. Brainchip can do this in milliseconds. Owen, is Brainchip, is it a buy or a sell for you?
It's a sell from me. It's quite a contentious one. I kind of thought of the most contentious one that I would be able to bring to the show today. And full disclosure, like I'm not much of a seller. I don't have a dog in this fight for or against. But what I would say is that a company that makes $27,000 in quarterly cash receipts, which is the most recent number I've got, and has a $344 million market capitalization. So basically translated to English, what that means is the company makes about $27,000 in the most recent quarter from customers. But it's losing because it's spending money to pay staff and these types of things. It's actually losing about $4 million out the door. Right. So with about $17 million of cash, you can do the math on how many quarters are left. But basically, I've always wished the company success, and I've been pretty public about that. But I've also been quite public in that I just think that at least former management were extremely promotional. And if a company is promotional, that's one thing. There's another company in our list today that is promotional, and they're coming out and saying wonderful things. That's great, but they've got to be able to back it up. And we haven't seen that yet from Brainchip. Now, Brainchip could go on and 10x from here and do really well. And I hope that's the case for all shareholders who maybe were invested at $1.60 or $1.50 or all the way down. For me, though, I think if I could say anything, like I'm not that good on saying when is the right time to sell, but what I would say is it's probably more of an avoid for most investors, unless you really go into the weeds on this.
Is it gonna ride the AI wave? Like, is that going to help it at all? Like, it seems like everything's about AI at the moment. So Brainchip's a big player in that space. Is that going to help it?
Yeah, and that was one of the things that did help it. So for the last few years, folks who were quite enterprising with their investing, they were looking ahead of the curve. They probably saw that the AI thing was coming, and they thought, well, Brainchip's probably the purest play of that, what we have in Australia. And I think what we're rapidly discovering as a society is that the winners from a lot of the AI things that we know and use every day are not the companies that necessarily design the underlying software, but the companies that benefit from using it.
Right.
And so I think, you can have a small allocation to a company like Brainchip when it's not yet producing the revenues that you would hope. But the key thing is that if you do make these types of bets, I would say, is just to keep them small.
Sure.
That's the only thing. Like, it's okay to take a risk, but just keep them small and contained right out in your satellite allocation.
Yep. All right. Excellent. To sell for you. All right. Next up, we're looking at Xero Limited, ASX XRO, currently trading at $101.24. Sorry, if it was $1.01, people would be screaming, I'm sure. Xero accounting software. I'm no abacus, but you can count on me. Little hat tip to Jamie T there. Buy or sell for you, Owen?
If it was trading in $1, I'd put all my money into it. I'd tell you that much. So yeah, it's a wonderful business. It's been going for a very long time now here in Australia, but more so in New Zealand. Across the pond is where it started with Rod Drury, the founder, who's since moved on. So basically, what you get with Xero is you get probably one of the highest quality Australian businesses. Now, people might say, well, what does that mean? Well, typically when you think about quality companies, what you get is you get things like growing revenue, you get wide profit margins, you get a product that people rave and rant about and say, how amazing is this? Like, I can't believe it. We made the switch. And one thing that you also tend to get for anyone that's looking for these businesses in the wild is you tend to get a lot of friction when these companies emerge. And so what that takes the form of is, like, everyone can remember when Afterpay came out. And effectively what we had on one side of the fence was all the consumer groups saying how horrible this thing is. I think Barefoot Investor called it a gateway drug and likened it to marijuana. And then you have all of the investors that were like, this thing's going to take off. And so you get friction. And the basic principle of long-term investing in growth-style companies is that some people have to disagree with you. Just like with the Brainchip comment before, someone out there is probably listening to this thing, and I own Brainchip, this guy knows nothing. And that person may have that, inside information, so to speak, not necessarily the legal kind, but just an insight. With Xero, basically what you get is a business that has created the most dominant accounting software in the country. And you can access it from anywhere. In fact, I was just on it before for my team. We use it. We've used it for a long time. We pay about $60 a month. And to be honest, the time and effort that it saves me in paying super, paying taxes, invoicing, all that sort of stuff, I'd probably pay $600. Like, don't tell Xero that, but that's probably what I'd pay. Because it saves my accountant. It saves my accountant that much money. Right? And basically, all of the business owners that I work with, because outside of Rask, I'm also a business coach, and I work with a lot of small businesses, and all of them use Xero. And all of them cannot believe how easy it is. And so what you get is a business that's growing. It doesn't have the profitability yet because it hasn't hit that point of inflection, we call it, but it's getting there.
Yeah.
Profits are going up, and especially under the current management. So
I think anyone that's been able to create a company that gets people excited about accounting, then that's a winner for sure.
Oh yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Xero is a buy for you. Excellent. All right, next up, and we're looking at Altium Limited, ASX ALU, currently at $44.26. And I've got a joke for you. Do you want to hear it?
Sure.
Yeah. What do you get if you cross Altium with an equity mate?
Don't know.
An ultimatum.
Well,
Thank you for laughing.
I'll give you a 7 out of 10, 7.5 out of 10, maybe. It's good. It's B+.
All right. I've got an ultimatum for you. Oh, give me some more buys, or I'll give you more bad jokes. Altium, is it a buy or a sell?
I'd give it a buy.
Right, brilliant.
Once again, all of these individual companies that we've mentioned so far would be out in that more satellite allocation that I have in a portfolio.
Yep.
So what we do at Rask is basically we help the community to understand that you should probably have your core on one side and your satellite on the other. And the way you do that in practice is you have in your core portfolio, which is that boring stuff we mentioned, you put that in one brokerage account, and then in another brokerage account, you have like your individual stocks, your more risky things. And Altium probably is still on that riskier side. It's even though it's a really high quality growth company, it sells software that engineers can use to design things called printed circuit boards. PCBs is what the industry jargon is. And basically everything around you, you're listening to this on headphones. Inside those headphones, there would be a tiny little board. You listen to this on your phone, you're in your car. All of these different things need to be designed and have these kind of like motherboards. If you think about the old school computers where you'd have like a big green or blue thing, transistors all over it, that type of stuff. Well, Altium designs the software which the engineers use to create that. And it's at this intersection of what we call connected manufacturing, where someone, say at Bosch, which makes the drills and power tools and that sort of stuff, or washing machines, someone at Bosch might be sitting in California designing a new washing machine, and they've got their factory in China, and they can, from the moment that they're using the software in California, basically click build, and then it sends a message to the automated manufacturing floor. Now, we're not there yet for a lot of these tools, but the Altium Designer, which is its core product, is moving towards that connected future.
Yeah,
and it's playing in a space where it's also happening to be growing fast, but it's profitable. It pays a dividend. The management team have hundreds of millions of dollars of skin in the game. So you end up with this business that's kind of leading the industry. It's got some competitors, but it's in this kind of sweet spot of growth, and it's really poorly understood. So
I remember during COVID, I think it was Toyota had a supply shortage, and they couldn't get chips, and there was something like 14,000 different chips per car, and it just, so everything's heading that way, right? So it's a good space to be in.
Oh, Mikey, can I give you one quick little thing on that?
Yeah.
The way to judge Altium's success in the short term is it owns a product called Octopart. Octopart is like Google for those parts that you just mentioned.
Right.
Like engineers can go in there and they can search for different little widgets, and some of them have thousands, as you just said.
Yeah.
But you can they'll update you on the usage of that website and that tool over time, so you can see what people are ordering and how popular that product is, and it shows you what's happening.
There you go. All right, so that's a buy for you. All right, next one. We are looking at Washington H. Soul Pttnsn and Company Limited. I'm glad they abbreviated the H there. Otherwise, that name would be ridiculously long, wouldn't it? Buy or sell. Currently ASX SOL, currently $33.48. Buy or sell for you. What do they do, Owen?
Yeah, so I've got it as a buy. It's one of those companies that could fit in the core or the satellite of a portfolio, and basically, it's a conglomerate, I guess, is the easiest way to think about it. So what's the conglomerate? A conglomerate is just when you put all things together and you just kind of see what happens.
That explains why their name is like 46 words long. That's the name. Everyone wanted to be represented in the name.
So the name actually traces back to over 100 years ago when the business was founded. It's founded in New South Wales. And just going off the top of my head here, so I may miss some of the facts, sorry, to the Milner family. But basically, you combined chemists. So you have, some people would know the Sol Pttnsn chemists that get around, and Louis Pttnsn, which is the business holder. And basically they came together and they started in pharmacy. But over time, what happened is, as the family that still runs it today, you can trace that lineage through time, 100 years later, basically what they've done is they've recognized that you can't, to have a business that lasts decades, you can't just do one thing forever. Like the laws of capitalism say that if you make a really good coffee, I'm out getting a soy cappuccino. I say, how good is this cappuccino from Patricia Coffee Roasters in Melbourne? For anyone that knows that, it's probably the best in the world. But you know what's going to happen is another barista is going to open up a shop right next door and try and copy them as best they can. So what Sol Patts recognized is that, hey, we can just start other businesses or buy other businesses using our cash flow from the chemists, and we can bring them into our stable. So fast forward to today, Sol Patts now does, it's kind of sold off the chemist, funnily enough, but it actually owns a big chunk of Brickworks, which is Austral Bricks. If you know, most houses are made out of Austral bricks. It's got businesses involved in things like electrical engineering. It's got businesses involved in funds management. It's got all different types of businesses under the one hood.
Right.
And the key difference between Sol Patts and, say, like VAS, the ETF we mentioned, is that because Sol Patts is a company structure, so meaning that when you buy it, you actually get shares, but when you buy VAS, you get units of an ETF. They're different legal structures. And without getting too into the weeds, what it means is the management of Sol Patts can buy companies that aren't public. So they don't have to buy and sell like an ETF every day to make sure that people can get in and out. They can buy and hold. And so they did that with many companies, and they can buy businesses in private markets and then sell them 10 years later if that's what they want to do. And so this is one of the only companies in Australia that has a track record of doing this over 50 plus years. And so you can get it, and you get a dividend, and you get wonderful management. And that's about all there is to it.
We're going to look at Lovisa Holdings, ASX LOV, currently $18.53. And before we hear your thesis, Owen, I want to play you another thesis on Lovisa I was given over the weekend, and then we can perhaps see if there's any similarities between the two.
Sure.
What do you like about Lovisa?
You can't just get your ears pierced there or just get earrings there. You can get friendship necklaces, a whole pack of earrings. And there's also other things that aren't jewellery.
Like what?
There's hair clips, scrunchies.
So you like shopping at Lovisa?
Yes, I went there today.
That was my 8-year-old daughter Emily giving her thoughts on Lovisa. Very bullish, fair to say, Owen. Owen, when thinking about investing in Lovisa, how much weight do you put on their ability to execute the hair clip and scrunchie strategy?
I think I should give up and just hand the reins over to her. If she wants to come in and take over, by all means, because you know what? The thing is, Adam, like when you have a business, people overcomplicate it, and the finance industry has been propped up by confusing the hell out of people. But at the end of the day, there's only this is wonderful idea about what a business actually is. In the earliest days, a business exists only to do something different to what's already available. And that's what pushes society forward. You know, Lovisa selling very, very affordable scrunchies or clips in the really awkward shops inside a Westfield shopping centre where the rent is low and it seemed like nothing could go there. That's something new, and that's something innovative. And as a company gets older, it goes from what the Motley Fool might call a rule breaker to a rule maker, where it does establish itself, and all of a sudden it sets the standard for an industry. And so if you think about it, you know, her take on Lovisa is exactly all you need to know. It has so many passionate people, not just young boys and girls. It also has my wife, who's considerably older. It has grandmas and grandpas and all different people that go in there for presents and for a night out where they're looking for a $10 necklace or 5 earrings for $15. And the competitive advantage of Lovisa is that it can bring designs to market in a matter of days, sometimes weeks. Whereas you go to one of the big box retailers, it could take a year before a product that's designed actually gets in the hands of a consumer. And so the core thesis is this: Lovisa is a high-risk business. It's a retailing business. Many have gone before and fallen away. You've got super high insider ownership with Brett Blundy. But the core thesis is this: you could buy Lovisa today and it's a great business.
Yeah.
And it might exist for a few years in mediocrity, but there's a chance, and it's not a huge chance, but say it's 30% probability. I'm just making that up.
Yeah.
That it is a success in either the USA or Europe, and its store count goes from 800 today to 3,000 in 5 years. And that's effectively what you're betting on.
Yep.
And that's the thesis. If that doesn't work, then you're not going to 3 or 4x your money.
All right. Go long scrunchies.
Yep.
Very good. All right, next up we are looking at the Vanguard Australian Shares High Yield ETF, ASX VHY, currently $66.25. High yield, Owen. Why are we mucking around with VAS when we could have high yield? That sounds better. It sounds like when they decided to keep Panadol on the market once they released Panadol Rapid. Like, Panadol Rapid? No thanks, I'd like this headache to linger for a bit longer.
Yeah.
Why would we buy why would we buy VAS when there's a high yield version? Is it the same thing, just more money?
Well, yeah, I guess in the end they say everything's just a toaster, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
But I mean, with the high yield VHY, what you get is you get 70 to 80 stocks on average. It kind of fluctuates a little bit. But basically what you get is 70 to 80 stocks, not 300 with VAS, and you get companies that are expected to pay dividends in the future. Right. So it's very simple and elegant in what it does, in that you take a standard, blue chip shares in Australia, you get a list of those, and then they basically plot that or match that against what analysts as a group expect a company to pay in dividends in the future. Yeah. And then from those two lists, you combine them, and whichever companies are out at the end, you basically just buy and hold those companies, and then it rotates every now and again. There are about 10 or so dividend ETFs. That's what they call them on the market, but this is my favorite by far because it has about 70 to 80 names. Most of the dividend ETFs only have about 20 to 30. Okay. It's an intelligent ETF in that it uses the forecast of dividends. So some of the old style ETFs for dividends, what they did was they go, well, BHP paid a dividend last year, we'll put it in the portfolio this year, and then BHP cuts its dividend, for example. Yep. And so that was what I would call a dumb ETF, whereas this is kind of forecasting ahead, doesn't get it right every time. I guess the predominant reason to use this ETF is towards retirement. I don't think anyone that's in their 20s that doesn't have a humongous portfolio that they're living off in passive income should be considering this. I think you should go with VAS because in that instance, you're going to get more growth. Yep. You're going to kind of swap out a bit of income today for future growth, which compounds faster. But for retirees that are Australian citizens, you get franking credits. You get all of those things if you hold an ETF like VHY, and it's pretty low cost. It's pretty easy to just swap in and out of a portfolio.
So you mentioned it was a smart ETF. Does that mean is it because I've heard of passive versus actively managed ETFs? Is it an actively managed ETF or is it still passive and it's just got an algorithm that forecasts the future?
Yeah, basically. So basically every ETF in Australia is basically passive, right? And this one is too. So I'll give you a quick thing to know. Yeah. Anytime you see in the name of an ETF, you see the letters ETF. That means that it's effectively passive, like it's run by a set of rules. Right. Now, there are some things in Australia that look like an ETF and quack like an ETF and bark like an ETF, but they do not have that three letters. They're not a duck dog? They're not a duck dog. They have to be called managed fund. So I'll give you an example of this. Say like the Fidelity Emerging Markets Fund. Yeah. That looks like an ETF. You buy it and sell it exactly the same way. Yep. But because there's a portfolio manager that makes the decisions, it cannot be called an ETF. Right. So ETFs in Australia are those kind of robotic things that you mentioned. They basically are passive, but to bring it back home, this thing isn't just saying we'll take everything. It's saying we'll take everything that pays a dividend. So there's a slight tweak to it, and that's what makes it interesting. Okay, very good. All right, that's a buy. All right, next up, we're looking at LaserBond.
LaserBond Limited, ASX LBL, currently 87 cents. Owen, is LaserBond a buy for you?
Yes, it is. I know that you had. I don't think he's drinking the Bond style drinks, but Andrew Page, who you had on the show previously, he did mention LaserBond. I listened to that episode.
Yep, excellent.
And he said he drank a gin and tonic, which is very Andrew of him. And I don't know. I guess he does have some appeal for James Bond style enthusiast. Andrew's pretty charismatic. Yeah, he could probably pull it off. So LaserBond is, as Andrew would have said in that episode, in fact he did, it's a surface engineering business. So don't let me bamboozle the bejesus out of you. Yeah. Basically what that means is it repairs machinery. That's as simple as you like. And so LaserBond's been doing this for many years. I was fortunate enough to interview the CEO, Wayne Hooper. And Wayne is part of the Hooper family who started the business. And here's an interesting thing. I believe, and Wayne could correct me if you're listening, Wayne, but I was the first person to ever interview him for running the business. I think that's the case. I could be wrong.
Ever? As in, ever?
Ever. He'd had he had some people rock up to the AGM one day. A friend, Luke Winchester, he rocked up to the AGM. This would be 5 to 10 years ago. Yeah. And they held their AGM at Smeaton Grange in Sydney. And normally it'd just be a handful of them, just the people that run the company rocking up to the AGM, taking the minutes, doing all that sort of stuff. And an investor walked in the door and they're like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Well, I'm here for the AGM. Isn't there like a thing going on today?" Yeah. And so that gives you a sense of how small and hidden this company has been for a very long time. But why do I like it? So LaserBond is about a $100 million company. It's profitable, has been for a long time. It's growing, compounding about 20% per year. It sells products to like mining services businesses. So you say, Adam, you walk in and you've got a gigantic Tonka truck wheel and you're like, "Hey, I need this thing repaired." I go, "Great, I'll do it." It's going to be 20 times stronger than if you bought a brand new wheel for your truck at the mine site. Wow. That's good for the environment. It's good for you. I'll have it back to you in a few weeks. But one of the things that's really interesting about LaserBond is it's actually now selling its laser bonding machines, if you like. So it's laser cladding machines, and it's selling them overseas. And so basically it can earn a royalty without doing any of the work. So in 10 years from today, I think that could be something that's interesting, but it is high risk.
Okay, excellent. All right, next up, we are looking at Macquarie Group, ASX MQG, currently $167.42. When I look at, I think of Macquarie Group, I think of the Mac 1 Hotel in Hobart. I stayed there for our honeymoon. Fantastic, actually, if you ever get the chance. Fantastic whiskey bar downstairs, too, if you ever get the chance. It's no holds bar, of course, but a fine bar nonetheless. But Owen, we're talking banking. Macquarie Group, is this a buy, hold, or sell for you?
I would buy it. I've never been to that bar, but people can walk away from this episode knowing that you can get some good whiskey. You know where to find your coffee, and you can also have some silver donuts with that, because that's what the Macquarie Group logo looks like. And so
coffee and donuts, that's what we offer on this show. Brilliant.
Macquarie Group is another name other than like the silver donut, if you look at the logo on top of buildings, is the Millionaire Factory. So basically Macquarie Group is an investment bank. So you can go to Macquarie and you can sell your company. So they'll have bankers that will help you sell it, finance it. A lot of the big mining companies use Macquarie for things like commodities trading and hedging their iron ore or their copper or whatever when they sell it in a global marketplace. Okay. Now, interestingly, this company, I believe, off the top of my head, has been profitable for 50 years in a row. So it's got just about as stellar a reputation as Washington H. Pttnsn, although it is completely different. However, during the GFC, Macquarie, off the top of my head, I think it went from over $100 a share to below $30 a share. So imagine if you're sitting there and you're thinking, "Oh yeah, great, blue chip company, Macquarie, globally diversified," and then, oh my Lord. So what they did after the GFC is basically they moved into traditional banking, or what we call retail banking. So now you can go to Macquarie, you can get a great term deposit. No affiliation. You can get a home loan.
Link in the show notes.
Link in the show notes. And they would make a great sponsor of Equity Match, just saying. So you can go and you can get all that sort of stuff. And so what they've done is they transformed their business from just investment banking to now retail banking, and they're one of the fastest growing. And so you get all of that packaged up, and it's got this self-fulfilling competitive advantage where everyone knows you can go there, you can get a great job, and you can become a millionaire, hopefully.
Yep.
And then so what does that do? That attracts more talented people and more talented people and more talented people, and it just reinforces this culture and cycle of professionalism and excellence.
All right, excellent. All right, it is time now for the big call. Owen, tough to come up with gags about the S&P 500 ETF, but IVV currently $46.55. I've got some of this one myself. See what I did there? Thank you. Is this a buy or a sell for you? This is the big call, so I'm guessing it's a buy.
It's a buy, yeah. It's a big call to say probably one of the most boring things in the world.
I didn't want to say it.
It's one of these businesses, one of these ETFs that is just like, it does everything in one. Yeah. And so I think for most folks who can't be bothered picking stocks and doing all that sort of stuff, this is the thing that you should be paying attention to. The reason why is it's pro-USA. It's the world's most powerful economy. But I'll give you some interesting facts. So a lot of people look at this and they go, well, hey, mate, there's no, there's no emerging markets. There's no China. There's none of this sort of stuff. But you know what's inside it? Is you got Apple that sells in China. You got Tesla that sells in China. You've got Starbucks. It's all around the world. You've got all of these wonderful American businesses that export their wares to the rest of the world. Right here in Australia, I'm recording on an Apple iMac, for example.
Yeah.
And so you get all of that in this one ETF that's all packaged up neatly for you. It's super low cost. And what reinforces my belief in IVV? Well, other than it being run by BlackRock, the other thing is the USA spends more on its military than the next 10 countries combined.
Yeah, wow.
And so if you think about what it's got going in its favor, it's got the world's most arable land, basically. It's, geographically, it's away from the rest of the world where there's a lot of, tension. It's got, a huge amount of millionaire migration. It's got some of the smartest people in the world. It's got a culture of innovation. And you get all of that bundled up for less than 10 basis points or 0.01%, less than that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty good bet.
Is it a good time? Like we're sort of hearing about the end of inflation in the States. The Fed chair's been out sort of talking, well, encouragingly about inflation being done. Is it a good time? Is that part of your sort of thinking around IVV as well?
So there's IVV, and then there's the equivalent that's currency hedged.
Okay.
So some people probably the number one thing that you should be looking at if you're thinking about adding money to IVV is what's the currency going to do in the next few years.
Yeah.
And you just want to make sure you're not buying or selling at extreme levels. And we could be close to an area where you could consider the currency extreme. So you can just go with the hedged option.
Yep.
And it's just a little bit more. But basically what that means is it neutralizes currency. And it's one of these things, Adam, where you can invest in it and you can buy and hold for very, very long periods of time. In that time, inflation is going to come and go. In that time, interest rates are going to come and go. In that time, we'll probably experience more wars. We'll probably experience more recessions.
Yep.
But that's been happening for 150 years. And over 150 years, on average, companies in the S&P 500 increase their profits between 6 and 7% a year.
Yeah. So the old time in the market rather than timing the market. Just
absolutely.
Get in.
Absolutely.
All right. Brilliant. Hey, Owen, big thanks for coming on the show today. I think it's been a really enjoyable show. Really appreciate you taking the time out to join me. Where can people find you if they'd like to hear more from you?
Yeah, sure. So for folks who aren't familiar, you can just head to ras.com.au or the Australian Investors Podcast.
Brilliant. Excellent. And if you'd like to hear more from me, then there's a new episode of Comedian versus Economist dropping every Wednesday, wherever you get your pods. And don't forget, we would love to know what you think of the show. This is episode 5 of a 6-part series where we're really just sort of testing out the format. Hopefully we'll be back bigger and even better next year, but we'd love to know what you think of the show. So send us an email, contact@equitymates.com, or leave a message on the Equity Mates Investing Podcast discussion group on Facebook, or Spotify reviews, wherever you can write something about the show. We'd love to see it. But yeah, that is all for us for this week. We'll be back next week for the final show in the series with Andrew Brown. I hope you'll join me then, but for now, it is bye from us.